안녕하세요, right? Something, yeah. My name is Steve Shirkey. I lead a team called the AI Global Black Belts for Korea as well as ANZ and ASEAN. Thank you so much for coming here today to talk with us or to hear us discussing the opportunity of AI. And when we think about what AI will be bringing, we think about generative AI having a transformational effect and impact for every business that we're seeing today. So when we look at the different opportunities that are coming from generative AI and how it's being applied, we see automation, right? Automation is an innovation. We also see productivity gains. Customers are reducing the amount of time that employees spend doing meaningless tasks, a lot of redundancy. Developers who now don't have to code as much. New customer engagement. It's a real challenge. We all have customers. How do we help make those customers feel that this service is personalized to their needs? How do we understand how the customer is feeling? Generative AI helps unlock that. And of course, new products and services. When we talk about Copilot, that didn't exist 2 years ago as a product, and now it's everywhere in our Microsoft products. So thinking about your business, those are 4 lenses to think about how generative AI can help your business. So far, we've helped more than 60,000 businesses, and obviously a lot of big names in there. Heineken, KPMG, Coca-Cola has been using it for advertising purposes. So a number of customers have been adopting this quickly. We're already into year 2 of generative AI as a revolution. And the growth of customer adoption has been 60% year on year. So what can you do with it? We described 4 different general cases, but there's a lot of different possible use cases. Everyone here has a different business or maybe the same business, but there's unlocking that opportunity of generative AI. This is only a short list. We'll talk about a couple of these that are very common. So one of the most common ones that we see is internal opportunity to assist employees. One of the key horizontal use cases is to leverage a HR assistant. We all know, we've all worked in companies, how hard it is to get information that you need and get it very quickly about HR policy. How many vacation days do we have every year? And that information becomes accessible via generative AI, as we have with AT&T, was unlocking a lot of the operational information for their customers, internal employees. The next one is one that we always struggle with. We have too much information. We just don't know what we know. And using generative AI to understand that documentation, to help us be able to derive meaning from it, many customers are getting that. Investec is a customer that is using it with their client-side advisors. So these advisors will be getting signals every time they're talking with customers. And so they're actually trying to use that as a real-time data source and to be able to understand what are the topics, what are the trends that are happening. That's just one example. And contact center. So when you think about contact center, that customer-facing experience, it's not about a new chatbot. It really starts with how do you enable the people you already have as customer service reps to get more insight and more information about that customer to be able to help the customer better. And sometimes it's about savings of time for those people, because as we have with Ally Financial, they were able to reduce the amount of time after the call when someone's entering data. They were able to reduce that by 30%. So now let's zoom back out and think about what are the 4 key aspects of success when you think about your generative AI solution. Well, if it's just a one-time only thing, you build it on your desktop and it runs once, it doesn't really have much value. Or if you're trying to build something that's already been built, not much value. But what we see is where customers really derive that innovation, it comes from about identify what's unique. What can you build that's unique, right? We're exploring your domain, your knowledge, your employees' knowledge, and how you can differentiate AI on top of that knowledge. When you think about how you want to scale that, you first think about how do you safeguard that? How do you ensure safety so that the system acts in the way that you expect it to? And finally, how do you operationalize? So it's the idea that you only run it once and it's great, but it actually only gains value when you can operationalize it and continue to evolve the system. So let's talk about each one of those. Innovate. So think about innovation. So much innovation. Every day there's innovation in this particular field. The models continue to change. They continue to be more performant, cheaper. That's always important. Become cheaper, but more capable. So their capabilities continue to expand. One particular way is multimodal capabilities. Now, what was state-of-the-art 2 years ago was it would understand text. And now it understands many, many more things. So think about how that changes the interface, the way we work with software. Think about the environments that people are deriving information from. And you may find that you can unlock a new use case with video that you never had the capability to do before. So what Azure offers is the ability to access this huge ecosystem of models. We have 1,600 curated models, may have increased since yesterday, who knows. And that includes things like multimodal capabilities. It can be addressing cost issues where you say, I think we need to reduce the cost, and I think this is good enough in terms of text processing. It can be any of the different factors, maybe about licensing, maybe something that you feel you need to leverage that maybe is from Mistral, you find that you actually find a better license, or Llama from the Meta family. So these are all the choices, the abundance of choice that you get when you're using Azure AI, and Azure AI Studio has this model catalog to select from. So when we think about the innovation, the breakthroughs, I had already mentioned multimodal on the left, but also small is the new big, right? Small language models, it's dominating the conversation. First, a small model becomes more efficient. It becomes less costly to operate because you don't need as much hardware. And ideally, you can run it at the edge. You can run it on device. This is the hot topic, so that's the second. It's that flexibility. You say, maybe it's good enough for a very specific use case, but I still need to use a large language model for something else, right? So you think about how you can balance the needs. The adaptation of these systems. So you may be hearing a lot about agents. And agentic LLMs or SLMs is the ability for these to actually automate and process on your behalf. Rather than giving it a full instructions, it is able to then act on behalf of the users. There is projection that we'll have more agents than human beings in the world by the 2030. So it's truly going to revolutionize how we get our business, how we do our business, how do we get things done. And of course, provision throughput is another capability of our platform, so that you say, I want to pay per token, I don't want to host this. These are the choices for how you want to innovate. So once again, the idea is that you have full lifecycle management inside of Azure AI. You can do benchmarking. You can ensure consistency in terms of how you deploy it. There are things called evals, which are very critical to ensuring that you have a consistent performance using language models. Next, differentiation. Every business in here that you represents a value. How do you unlock that value? How do you make these models work on your behalf? And when you think about your data, we are inundated, swarming with data. We have structured data, we have unstructured data, we have video, we have all these different signals. How do we basically process this? And it's all unique to your business. The models themselves, they're not real-time learning, at least not now. So you can choose to train the model, and it will be up to date as of the last date you trained it. But the real solution to this is often incorporate the data via RAG, right? Retrieval Augmented Generation. So it's not just a model, but it's model plus your data. And so when you think of how you use that, it helps ground the model. It helps provide a reference point to the actual data underneath. And when we think about that process, it's an evolving process, an evolving science of how do you take data from your traditional data stores and merge it into the model. There's a process called chunking. There's vectorization so that it understands what exactly do you mean by this term. It's able to then have a more rich understanding of questions and be able to say, I understand what documents may be relevant to that question. It's the ability to index that because speed is very critical. And of course, re-ranking, right? So you have the best possible source of data and ground truth that's helping you to understand what the question was and what the answer should be. You can do all of this independently. That's a lot of work. But what Microsoft offers is our AI search product. So inside of that product, it handles much of what we just discussed with chunking those individual documents, being able to vectorize and vector storage of that, to be able to handle the re-ranking, very critical aspect. So you can choose to think about it as you have all these data sources and you use AI search. You can achieve results very quickly. You can in parallel say, maybe there's something else that we want to do beyond that in terms of building our own system, using Pinecone. You can augment the system however you wish. But AI search out of the box will provide you a lot of value. So, safety. A lot of people hear about responsible AI. It was mentioned earlier by Seung-ho that is a critical part of your AI Center of Excellence. Safeguarding is very important to us at Microsoft. We've been working on this for 8 years, and it continues to be something that we're sharing with the world in terms of standards, how customers can protect their systems. So you have potential with these new technologies for harm, the potential for inputs to be trying to change the behavior of the system. You put a lot of work into building the system and getting it right, and some teenager can just enter something and suddenly have the system behaving differently. So protecting the inputs, making sure we're not providing bad inputs into the model, and that when it comes out the other side, that you're ensuring the content doesn't create an environment of hate or harm, violence, any of these suggestions that could come from the models. And so when we think about what's the challenge and what needs to be offered, you have this ability to fundamentally look at a multimodal content. It's not just text. It could be the image itself that's being presented that could be introducing a challenge to the system, both input and output. You know, the idea that you may have specific custom needs for how you want to control. So maybe it's not the standard category, but maybe it's something about how you do your business and you don't want to have that unfiltered. And so you have the ability to create custom categories around that. Prompt shielding. So the area of prompt injection, the attack that happens, what we talk about, someone trying to change the system by suggesting to the LLM to behave differently. So there's actually filters for that to try to detect when someone's trying to change the system. And of course, output. There's been much discussion when you generate an image. Let's say you go to Bing and you say, generate an image of something. Then there's a real question, well, where did this image come from? The image could have copyright material inside of it. It could show Mickey Mouse or something like that. So the filtering should also behave in a way that ensures protection of copyright as well. And the ones that are generating those images should be able to stand behind a commitment, as we do at Microsoft, of our customer copyright commitment, where if there's ever an issue and ever a challenge in legal terms, we're there to stand behind and support any legal action to protect you as a user of the system. So Azure AI has a content filtering service. That content filtering service will provide support around everything we've discussed, from detecting whether someone is trying to inject on the prompt and change behavior, to being able to help detect the outputs are not aligned with what you wanted to try to achieve. It also stands on top of a few very critical tools. Microsoft Purview is our data governance stack and solution. So it ensures that whatever data is being fed in the system, it's being respected for security purposes. You don't, well, maybe you want to know the CEO's salary, but if you're building the solution, you will be the person who will be fired for having had that information revealed. So Microsoft Purview is a very critical part of that, ensuring the right data gets to the system, and Microsoft Defender for that continuous endpoint view. So it's the comprehensive solution that we're talking about here. It's the ability to provide you the tools that are necessary to ensure safety from top to bottom. And finally, we're looking at operationalizing this, right? How do you ensure consistency, right? If you come from the software development area, you know there's solutions to such things. That's what we're talking about when we think about the application plus the models. How do you ensure a successful, continuous, scalable way of deploying that, right? And it becomes about communications and coordination, ensuring that your system can basically address who's delivered the best model, how has it been evaluated, ensuring that you can then repeatedly deliver that, and ensuring that all the other privacy and safety needs have been met as part of the deployment process. So it's typically called LLM Ops. And so we bring together, 4 perspectives on what that is. So it's about the ability to identify these different benchmarks for testing your models. It's the ability to customize those through prompt engineering. It's essentially making consistent everything we've talked about to this point so that your teams are all acting uniformly to achieve the outcome, to deal with any manage any anomalies, deal with any things that change along the way, and that allow you as a business to continue to iterate. You would probably be surprised how few companies have an LLM Ops framework in place for consistent delivery. It's a real challenge. We make it easier using Azure AI Studio to be able to wrap around that and provide you an ability to execute, retrieve the latest models, do your evaluations against them, make sure that the testing is continuous. It always checks every time some small change is made. And then being able to integrate to your existing environments, wherever they may be. So when you think of these 4 different pieces, how they all come together. There's a product for that, but it's all part of a larger solution. And that's the benefits of the ecosystem. We could talk to any individual component. We could say, AI Studio, whatever, against some other product. But the question is, how do you build this all together to create the outcome? And how do you create a unique product that's scalable? I think looking at that, you can see a number of services that we offer. My team works every day with customers to ensure that they're using it correctly and successfully. And if you are already an Azure customer, you benefit from your knowledge of Azure, from maybe the data you have in Azure, that you can achieve outcomes very quickly on top of Azure. And I mentioned about help for customers, and we have a number of different resources. We actually offer online, available to you, a readiness assessment. We have responsible AI standards that you can download and find out how we do it. We give you examples of how we ensure impact assessment is done of our systems. I mean, we make software. That's our job, right? So it's very critical to us to ensure that software is done in a way that's most considering of the impact and be able to assess and understand the outcome. We have solution accelerators. So for customers who say, I have the data today, how do I actually provide an outcome from that data? Where do I start, Steve? That would be a good question. So it starts and it begins with driving, using solution accelerators. You can do small experiments. You can literally click a button and run it in Azure and start giving it your data and see, okay, how does this behave? And to be honest, it actually starts as early as just using Copilot and getting used to the technology and understanding how it behaves. How does it respond? But we also have some other programs when you think about programs to help you, enabling your teams. And so again, we have fast track support. This is a team that basically is available for helping you to get to results. You have AI landing zones. If you're starting this from scratch, it's good to review how to build this in production. So you have all these different programs and different ways that Microsoft can help you. So I do encourage you to talk to whoever invited you to the room today to ask them, how can you help me to get to business results, to create a unique, scalable product? So that's my presentation, but thank you so much. I don't know if there's any questions. If not, I will be here. So thank you. 감사합니다.